The stars shone cold and silent as Commander Daniel Hayes' small human ship glided into the alien system. The darkness of space was pierced by the twin suns of the distant planet, casting pale golden light across the endless stretches of strange crystal towers that rose from the surface below. Daniel had seen many worlds, many battles, but nothing had prepared him for the sight that now filled his eyes. The city beneath shimmered like liquid glass, alive with energy, as though the very buildings themselves were breathing. Yet amid the splendor, one presence dominated all: the alien queen. She was not just a ruler. She was a living force, larger than any being Daniel had ever encountered, with skin that gleamed like polished silver, and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of countless centuries. Her gaze fell upon him, piercing and quiet, as if she could see every fear, every doubt, every secret thought in his mind. Daniel felt the air tighten around his chest, his heart pounding. He had come to deliver a simple message of peace. But the moment he stepped into her presence, he realized that words might not be enough to save his people. The doors of the palace opened, and a wave of soft, glowing light spilled onto the landing platform. The sound of water cascading from crystal fountains echoed around him, creating a melody unlike anything on Earth. Daniel's boots made hollow sounds against the polished floor as he stepped forward, each step heavier than the last. He tried to steady himself, but his hands shook slightly, and he felt the heat of fear crawling up his spine. Fear, he reminded himself, was not weakness. He had faced death before, but this was something different. She rose from her throne, her presence commanding yet silent, as if the entire world had paused to watch her. Her voice, when it came, was soft but impossible to ignore. "Human," she said, each syllable rolling like distant thunder. "Why have you come?" Daniel swallowed hard. He had rehearsed diplomacy, memorized countless treaties, imagined every scenario. But now, facing her, every word felt empty, inadequate. I come with a message of peace," he said finally, his voice quivering but firm. "Earth seeks understanding. We do not wish for war. We wish to coexist." Her gaze did not waver. It was not anger he saw, nor curiosity alone, but a weight of judgment, as though she could measure his very soul. "Many have spoken these words before," she said, her tone gentle yet deadly. "And many have fallen for their weakness. What makes you think you are different, human?" Daniel's stomach twisted, a mixture of fear and determination rising within him. He straightened his back, forcing his trembling hands to calm. "Because we are small," he said, his voice gaining strength, "but we fight. We endure, we survive. Humanity may be fragile, but our spirit is not. We protect our own, no matter the cost." For a long moment there was silence. Only the soft hum of energy from the crystalline palace filled the air. Daniel could feel the weight of her attention pressing down on him, heavy and unyielding. He thought of his family, of the people he had sworn to protect, and of the countless generations who had built humanity from nothing. He realized that this queen, this being who could crush entire worlds with a thought, had seen the rise of his species, and now she was testing him, testing whether the human spirit still burned bright. Then she smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips that sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. "You are brave, little one," she said softly, almost tenderly. "But bravery alone is not enough here. You must show me the strength that words cannot describe. Otherwise, your mission and your species may not survive." Daniel felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. He had not expected to face a challenge like this on his first mission outside Earth. Yet even as fear gnawed at him, a strange spark of pride rose within. He was human, small, fragile, imperfect, but fierce. And he would not bow. As the alien queen's gaze bore into him, Daniel realized that his journey had only begun. The true test of humanity, its courage, its resilience, its fire, was waiting for him in the heart of the alien world. And somehow he knew the stars themselves were watching. The alien queen's eyes never left Daniel as he stepped deeper into the palace. Every movement she made was fluid, like water flowing over stones, yet filled with a power that made the very air vibrate. Daniel felt his knees weaken, but he forced himself to stand tall. He had been trained for war, for diplomacy, for impossible situations, but nothing in his life had prepared him for facing a being who seemed older than the stars themselves. "Human," she said again, her voice soft, almost hypnotic, yet carrying a weight that pressed down on him. "Do you know what it means to meet me without fear?" Daniel's heart thumped so loudly he thought she could hear it. I do not, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I only know. I must speak for my people. I must try. Her lips curved into a small, inscrutable smile. Courage. Or foolishness. They look alike in your kind, she said. Tell me, why should I believe that humans are worthy of a place among the stars? You are fragile, weak, easily broken. Daniel felt the anger rise, mixing with the fear curling in his stomach. Fragile, maybe, he said, but we fight. We endure. Even in the face of death, we do not give up. We build, we protect, we love, and sometimes that makes us stronger than anything else in the universe. The Queen tilted her head, considering him. Many have spoken like this. Many have claimed courage, yet fell before the smallest obstacle. What makes you different, human? Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of the humans who had walked into impossible wars, who had faced famine, plague, and extinction, yet never stopped striving. He thought of the families waiting on Earth, hoping that someone, anyone, could make first contact and ensure their survival. Because we do not fight for ourselves alone, he said, his voice steadying. We fight for each other, for our families, our homes, our dreams, and even if we fail, we stand again. That is the strength you cannot measure with weapons or size. For the first time, a flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps even respect, passed across her face. Interesting, she murmured. Many humans speak of bravery, but few live it. Few carry it in their hearts when faced with true power. You tremble, human, yet your spirit does not waver. Daniel's hands were shaking and he felt sweat prickling his brow, but he did not bow. He had faced monsters, he had seen death, yet nothing had tested him like this. He realized that the Queen was not just judging him. She was testing humanity itself, measuring whether the fire of his species still burned. The palace seemed to pulse around him, the light bending and shifting, as if it too were aware of the tension. Daniel could hear the faint hum of energy, like a heartbeat, and he felt both terrified and strangely alive. Every instinct screamed for him to flee, to bow, to surrender, but he could not. He could not betray the millions who depended on his courage. You speak well, human, the Queen said finally, her voice softer now, almost gentle, but words are fragile. Actions define strength. Tell me, are you ready to face the consequences of your courage? Daniel's chest tightened. He did not know what she meant, and yet he knew the answer. I am, he said, voice firm, though his body trembled. I will face anything to protect my people, anything to show that humans are not weak, that our spirit is stronger than the universe itself. The Queen's eyes glimmered like liquid stars. For a moment, Daniel thought she would strike him down, that all hope would vanish. But she only inclined her head slightly, as if acknowledging his words. So the fire of your kind still burns, she whispered almost to herself. I will see if it can survive what comes next. Daniel swallowed, feeling a mixture of relief and dread. He did not yet know what trials awaited him, but he understood one thing clearly. His mission was no longer just about peace. It was about proving, in the most impossible way, that humanity was more than fragile flesh. It was about showing that the human spirit could shine brighter than the most ancient, powerful beings in the galaxy. And as he stood there, facing the alien Queen, Daniel realized that fear had become his ally. It reminded him that he was human, and sometimes that was enough to stand against a goddess. The throne room seemed to stretch endlessly, glowing with soft, alien light that shimmered off the crystal walls. Daniel felt dwarfed by its vastness, as if the entire universe itself were pressing down on him. The alien Queen stood at the far end, towering, majestic, her presence filling every corner of the room. She did not move, yet Daniel felt as if the air itself obeyed her will, bending around her as though she were the center of creation. Human, she said, her voice calm but sharp. You claim to carry the fire of your species, yet fire can flicker and fade. Many have spoken like you, words filled with pride, courage, and hope, but all were extinguished when faced with true power. Daniel's hands clenched into fists at his sides. His heart pounded, a wild rhythm of fear and determination. I do not claim to be invincible, he said, his voice trembling slightly. I only claim that humans do not give up. We face what comes, even if it seems impossible. That is how we survive. That is how we endure. The Queen's eyes narrowed, glimmering like molten metal. She lifted one hand and the floor beneath Daniel began to shift. Crystal tiles rose and fell like waves, tilting beneath his boots. Daniel stumbled, struggling to maintain balance, but he did not fall. Each step forced him to steady himself, to find the courage to move forward despite the fear pressing in from all sides. Many humans would break under this simple trial, the Queen said, her voice echoing through the vast hall. Many would beg for mercy, cry for their lives, and plead for surrender. Why should I believe you will not do the same? Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of the humans who had fought wars with nothing but courage and hope. He thought of children who had learned to survive in worlds far harsher than this palace, of families who had rebuilt their lives after loss and disaster. Because our strength is not in the absence of fear, he said, taking careful steps across the moving tiles, but in the choice to stand, even when the world tries to crush us. We rise, we endure. That is what makes us strong. For the first time, the Queen moved closer. The air seemed to shimmer around her, and Daniel felt a sudden weight in his chest as though the energy of the room were testing his very heart. She did not touch him, yet every nerve in his body screamed as if her gaze could pierce through flesh and bone, measuring the depth of his courage. You speak well, human, she murmured, but words are fragile. Only actions can prove the strength you claim. The question is not whether you are brave, but whether you can endure when the universe itself seems against you. Are you ready to see if your spirit can survive that test? Daniel swallowed, the fear burning at the back of his throat. His legs shook, but he straightened his back. I do not know what comes next, he admitted, but I know this: I will not falter. I will not give up. Humanity does not bend to fear. We face it and we rise. The Queen studied him silently, her face unreadable, her eyes shining like stars. Then she spoke softly, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. Good. Let us see if you truly carry the fire of your kind. Suddenly, the palace shifted. Light and shadow danced across the walls, and Daniel felt the air thicken, pressing down on him with invisible weight. Strange images flashed before his eyes. Visions of dying worlds, battles without end, civilizations lost to time. The challenge had begun, not with weapons or monsters, but with the pressure of the universe itself, a test of endurance, courage, and spirit. Daniel's chest heaved, his breath coming in short bursts. Every instinct told him to flee, to surrender, to cry for mercy. But he remembered the faces of his people, the hopes of his planet, and the words he had spoken. He lifted his head, steadied his trembling hands, and took one deliberate step forward. Then another. Each step became a declaration, a silent promise that humanity would not break. The alien Queen watched, her expression calm yet intense, as Daniel pressed onward. She could see the fear, the struggle, the trembling resolve, and somewhere within it the unmistakable spark of human strength. The fire was small, fragile, yet impossible to ignore. Daniel did not know if he would survive what came next, but he knew one truth with absolute certainty: he would not surrender. Humanity had carried him this far, and humanity would carry him further still. The throne room stretched endlessly, shimmering with light that seemed alive. Crystal pillars reflected Daniel's own trembling reflection, but he did not dare look away from the alien Queen. She stood tall, majestic, her presence more vast than anything he had ever known. Every instinct screamed at him to bow, to kneel, to surrender, but he knew he could not. Humans were small, fragile, but they had something no alien could ever measure: courage that refused to break. You speak of courage, the Queen said softly, her voice flowing like molten silver. Yet courage alone cannot save you. Many humans have entered my world proud and defiant, and all have fallen. What makes you think you are different? Daniel's heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. His hands shook, but he lifted his chin and spoke with every ounce of determination he could summon. Because humans fight not just for themselves, he said, his voice firm despite the fear crawling up his spine, but for each other. We rise again, even when we fail. We endure. That is what makes us strong. The Queen tilted her head, her silver hair flowing like liquid in the air, and her eyes glimmered with a strange light. Words are fragile, human, she said. Show me your strength. At her command, the crystal floor shifted. Tiles rose and fell like waves, forming uneven, treacherous paths across the hall. Daniel stumbled, barely catching himself. Each step was a battle against gravity, against fear, against his own trembling body. I will not falter, he muttered, more to himself than to her. You may walk, the Queen said, but the path will test your spirit. Many would break under this pressure. Many would beg for mercy. Why should I believe you will not? Daniel thought of Earth. of families who had rebuilt their lives after disaster, of soldiers who had fought with nothing but courage. He thought of the children who looked up at the stars and dreamed of heroes. Because our strength, he said, is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to rise in spite of it. Humans endure when all seems lost. We carry the fire of hope even when the world is against us. The Queen's eyes narrowed and the air seemed to hum with power. Daniel felt an invisible pressure pressing against his chest. The walls of the throne room seemed to stretch, bending reality around him, challenging his every step. He could feel his body shaking, his muscles screaming for rest, yet he refused to stop. Step by step he moved forward, each movement a declaration. Humanity would not bow. "You are brave," the Queen whispered, her voice almost tender now. "But bravery is not enough. Survival is more than courage, it is wisdom, endurance, and heart. Can you endure what comes, human?" Daniel's throat tightened, but he forced his answer out, steady and strong. "I do not know what comes next. But I know this, I will face it. I will not falter. Humanity has survived impossible odds before, and we will do so again." The Queen watched in silence, her expression unreadable. Yet Daniel could sense approval hidden beneath the surface. She lifted her hand and the shifting floor stopped. Light rippled across the hall like a living wave. And Daniel felt a strange warmth fill his chest, as if the room itself acknowledged his resilience. "You walk like one who carries the fire of their kind," she said softly. "Not many can do this, human. Many fall before even the smallest challenge. Yet here you stand, trembling yet unbroken. Perhaps there is hope in your species after all." Daniel's legs shook as relief and exhaustion washed over him, but he stood tall. He realized the challenge was not just a test of strength, but of spirit. And as he stared at the Queen, he felt something shift inside him, a deep understanding that being human meant more than muscle or technology. It meant enduring, surviving, and rising no matter the odds. Step by step, Daniel had proven what his words alone could not. The fire of humanity burned brighter than fear, brighter than doubt, and the alien Queen had noticed. The path ahead would be harder, he knew, but for the first time he believed he could face it. The throne room had grown quieter, the soft hum of alien energy surrounding Daniel like a living thing. He felt exhausted, his body trembling from the challenge he had just survived. But even as he steadied himself, he could not take his eyes off the alien Queen. She had not moved, yet her presence filled the room so completely that he felt as though he were standing in the center of a storm. "Human," she said, her voice low, soft, almost intimate. "Have you forgotten who I am?" Daniel froze. The words struck him like a blade he could not see. His knees shook and he staggered back, gripping the edge of the crystalline platform for support. I don't understand," he whispered. I only know that I must speak for Earth, for my people." The Queen's gaze softened, but it was no less powerful. "Once," she said, "I watched your ancestors. Long before you reached the stars, before your ships could fly across galaxies, I saw the courage of your kind. You were small, fragile, yet unyielding. You fought against extinction, against every impossibility, and yet your spirit burned bright." Daniel's breath caught. He had never imagined that the being before him, this creature of unimaginable power, had witnessed humanity's rise from afar. The weight of that knowledge pressed down on him, a mix of awe and fear. I did not know," he said, his voice trembling. "I only know that we try, that we fight, and that we endure." The Queen moved closer, her towering figure radiating warmth and intensity at once. "Many humans forget their own strength," she said softly. "They see themselves as weak, fragile, limited. Yet the fire that carried your species through impossible odds still burns. And now, I see it in you." Daniel felt tears prick his eyes, though he did not dare let them fall. The fear he had carried all this time, fear of failure, of death, of judgment, began to mix with a strange, overwhelming pride. He realized that the Queen was not merely testing him, she was showing him the truth of his kind. Humanity was fragile, yes, but in its fragility lay a power no weapon could ever measure. "You tremble, human," she whispered almost tenderly, "and yet you stand. You carry the courage of millions in your chest, though you may not even realize it. That is what makes your kind remarkable. That is what makes you strong." Daniel swallowed hard. He had always thought strength was measured in muscle, in numbers, in weapons. Yet standing here, facing the most powerful being he had ever known, he understood that true strength was something different. It was endurance. It was courage in the face of fear. It was the willingness to stand for others even when all seemed lost. I will not fail, he said, voice firm though his body shook. I will protect my people. I will carry the fire of humanity forward, no matter what comes. The Queen's eyes glimmered like liquid stars, and for the first time, Daniel felt something in them beyond judgment, recognition. She stepped back slightly, allowing the light of the twin suns outside to reflect across her silver skin. And Daniel realized that she was not cruel. She was powerful, yes, and terrifying, but she also understood the rare spark he carried. Remember this, human, she said, her voice echoing softly in the vast hall. Your fire is small, but it burns brighter than most would imagine. Do not forget it. Do not allow it to be extinguished, not by fear, not by doubt, not by the universe itself. Daniel nodded, feeling a surge of resolve wash through him. He had faced fear, survived impossible trials, and learned something deeper about his species. Humanity was fragile, yes, but it was also unbreakable in ways the universe had not yet measured. And he, one small human among billions, would carry that truth forward, into the unknown. For the first time since arriving, Daniel felt a calm certainty. The challenge had not broken him. Instead, it had shown him who he truly was and who humanity truly was. And somewhere deep in the presence of the alien queen, he understood that courage, endurance, and spirit were stronger than any weapon, stronger than any fear, stronger even than the stars themselves. The air in the throne room seemed to thrum with quiet power. Daniel's legs still trembled from the weight of the queen's words, but he stood taller now, a new determination rising in his chest. The alien queen's gaze swept over him, and he felt as though every particle of the room were assessing him, weighing his courage, his spirit, his very soul. Many humans would break here, she said, her voice soft but sharp, cutting through the silence. Many would beg for mercy, cry for their lives, and plead for surrender. You tremble, yet you stand. But can you endure what comes next? Daniel's throat tightened. His pulse thundered in his ears, but he drew a deep breath and nodded. I will endure, he said firmly. I do not know what comes, but I know I will not falter. Humanity has faced impossible odds before, and we rise every time. The queen's eyes glimmered like distant stars. Slowly she raised her hand and the room changed. Light bent and twisted. Shadows stretched into shapes that seemed alive. The crystal floor rippled like water, and Daniel felt himself lifted slightly as if the very air had become a weight pressing on him from all sides. Fear clawed at him, cold and sharp, but he forced himself to focus. You speak of courage, human, she said softly, but now you will show it. Stand as you are, unbroken, and let the universe test you. Let it push you, pull you, threaten to crush you. Will you remain? Daniel's legs shook under the strange pressure, and for a moment his mind screamed to surrender. Every instinct urged him to fall, to beg, to run. But he remembered the faces of his people, the children who dreamed, the families who prayed, the millions depending on him. He straightened his shoulders. I will not break, he whispered almost to himself. Even if I fall, even if I am alone, I will endure. That is what humans do. The queen's lips curved into a small, approving smile. Good, she said. Few speak like this. Fewer live it. Let us see if you can survive the truth of your own courage. The rippling of the floor intensified. Daniel felt as though invisible hands were pressing on him, bending him, forcing him to his knees. Strange visions filled his mind. Endless voids, dying worlds, armies collapsing under impossible odds. He stumbled, fought to keep his balance, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Each step was a battle against fear, against exhaustion, against the overwhelming pressure of the queen's test. But he did not stop. Step by step he moved forward, his every motion a testament to human endurance. Sweat streamed down his face, his muscles burned, and yet he held his ground. Every moment of fear was met with resolve. Every thought of surrender was replaced by the truth he carried in his heart. Humanity does not yield. Humanity rises. The queen watched in silence, her expression calm yet intense. Daniel could feel her awareness in every cell of his body, as if she were measuring not just his strength but the fire of the species he represented. She could see the fear, the struggle, the trembling of his flesh, and yet beyond all that, she saw the unbreakable spirit that refused to bow. You endure, she whispered, her voice soft and almost tender. You carry the fire of your kind. Many would have fallen. Many would have failed. But you rise. That is rare. That is what makes humans remarkable. Daniel's chest heaved, his body exhausted, his legs trembling. Tears threatened, but he refused them. This was not a moment of weakness, it was a moment of triumph. He had faced the impossible and remained standing. He had carried the fire of humanity through the storm, and in doing so he had proven what words could not, that humans, though small and fragile, possessed a courage that even the strongest of beings could not ignore. The Queen lowered her hand and the room settled. The floor stilled, the shadows faded, and the air no longer pressed against him. Daniel's legs shook, but he was upright, unbroken. He had survived. He had endured. And somewhere deep in the presence of the alien Queen, he knew that humanity had been seen and recognized for the force it truly was. The silence that followed was heavy, yet peaceful. Daniel stood in the center of the throne room, his body trembling but his eyes burning with quiet strength. The alien Queen watched him for a long time, her face unreadable. Her eyes, however, carried something new, something softer, deeper, almost human. She slowly descended from her throne, the air, around her shimmering like starlight. Every step she took echoed with grace and power. Daniel wanted to step back, but he couldn't. He didn't want to. He had faced her storm and survived. Whatever came next, he was ready. "You stood where no mortal should," she said gently, her voice like a melody that carried both sorrow and wonder. "You felt the weight of my will and did not bow. Do you know how rare that is, human?" Daniel shook his head, still catching his breath. "I didn't stand because I am brave," he said quietly. "I stood because I had no other choice. My people, they're all I have. If I fall, who will rise for them?" The Queen stopped a few steps away from him. For the first time, Daniel noticed how tired she looked behind her regal glow. There was sadness in her, hidden beneath her power. It was the kind of sadness that comes from watching centuries pass and losing things that can never return. Her voice softened even more. "You remind me of what we once were," she said. "Before we became conquerors, before power became our only truth. Once my people loved, dreamed, and protected as you do now. But that was long ago." Daniel looked up at her, his heart heavy yet curious. "Then why fight us?" he asked. "Why try to break what you once understood?" The question lingered in the air like a blade. The Queen's eyes shimmered. For a moment, the great Empress of the Stars seemed less like a god and more like a lonely soul. "Because I forgot," she whispered. "I forgot what it meant to care. I forgot what it meant to fight for something more than pride." She took another step forward, her voice breaking just slightly. "And now seeing you, trembling yet unyielding, fragile yet unbroken, I remember." Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't know what to say. He could feel something changing in the room, in her, and maybe even in himself. The energy that once pressed down on him now felt warm, alive, like a faint heartbeat connecting two worlds. The Queen looked at him, her gaze sharp again but filled with emotion. "Do you know what it means to me, human? That you still stand after everything I have done. That you still speak of love, of hope in front of your destroyer." Daniel met her eyes. "It means I haven't forgotten who I am," he said simply. "And maybe you shouldn't forget who you are either." For a long time, the Queen didn't speak. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly she raised her hand, not in threat but in grace. A gentle light surrounded Daniel, healing his bruises, calming his heartbeat. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke again. "You carry something your kind does not even see in itself," she said. "A fire that burns not to destroy but to endure. Perhaps that is why the universe fears you and why it needs you." Daniel stared at her, stunned. "Then will you end this war?" he asked. The Queen's gaze dropped. "Wars do not end in a moment," she said softly. "But hearts can change. You have changed mine." For a brief moment she reached out and placed her hand on his chest over his heart. The touch was light, almost trembling. "Do not let your people lose this fire, Daniel. Protect it, because it is more powerful than any weapon we have ever built." He looked at her, seeing not a monster but someone who had finally remembered her own soul. The Queen's voice faded into a whisper, barely audible. "Have you forgotten who I am?" she asked, not as a threat but as a question filled with sorrow and longing. Daniel's answer came softly. "No," he said, "but maybe you're remembering who you were." The Queen's lips curved into the smallest, saddest smile. The light around them dimmed, but something eternal had changed between them, something that no war could erase. And in that quiet space between human courage and alien royalty, Two hearts, once enemies, found a fragile, powerful understanding. The throne room was quiet. The light that had once glowed with cold alien power now felt softer, almost human. Daniel stood in silence, his body still aching but his heart steady. Across from him, the alien queen stood motionless, her eyes distant as if she were seeing both past and future at once. For the first time, there was no tension between them, only understanding. "You should return to your people," she said gently. "They will need to see you. They will need to know that you survived." Daniel nodded, his voice low. "And what about you?" The queen looked away, her silver crown catching the dim light. "I will do what I should have done long ago," she said softly. "I will listen." There was a silence between them that felt heavier than any weapon, yet it was peaceful. Daniel realized that he was no longer afraid of her. Somewhere inside he even felt pity, the most powerful being in the galaxy, and yet she looked lost. "Your kind has shown me something I forgot existed," she continued. "Compassion without condition, strength without cruelty. You could have hated me. You could have cursed me. But instead you stood even when the universe broke you. That is what makes you human." Her words sank deep into Daniel's heart. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a soldier, a survivor, a man doing his duty. But now, standing before her, he understood that his endurance carried the weight of all humanity. Every tear, every sacrifice, every act of courage, they had all led to this moment. "What will you do now?" he asked quietly. The queen's voice trembled just slightly. "I will stop the fleets," she said. "No more death. No more destruction. Your world will live, not because it is powerful, but because it has reminded me of mercy." Daniel blinked, unsure if he heard her right. "You would spare us?" The queen looked at him, and for a heartbeat her expression softened into something almost human. "You are already spared," she said. "You spared yourselves the moment you refused to surrender your heart. You made me remember mine." She turned then, her long robes flowing like waves of light. The great chamber hummed as if the whole ship, no, the whole empire, could feel her decision. Her voice echoed, soft but strong, carrying through the air like the wind before dawn. "The age of endless war ends now." Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. He had seen comrades die, watched cities burn, and thought the end was certain. But now somehow peace was real. It had been born not from force, but from understanding, something only a human heart could give. The queen looked back at him one last time. "Daniel," she said softly, "when the stars speak of this day, they will remember not the queen who ruled, but the human who stood." He smiled faintly, his voice trembling with emotion. "Then let them remember that we stood together." A faint glow spread around her, and Daniel realized she was fading, her form turning to light. The queen's eyes lingered on him as she whispered, "Do not let your world forget this lesson. The universe changes through hearts, not weapons." Then, with a final breath of shimmering light, she was gone. The chamber dimmed. Silence returned. Daniel stood alone, but not truly alone. The queen's words still echoed in the air like a song that would never die. He fell to his knees, not from weakness, but from the weight of everything that had happened. He thought of Earth, of his people, of the endless struggle that had finally found peace. A single tear rolled down his cheek, and he whispered, "She remembered who she was." When Daniel returned to Earth, the skies were calm. The alien fleets were gone. People looked up in disbelief as the stars shone brighter than ever before. The war was over. Humanity had survived, not because of power, but because of heart. And somewhere in the endless sky, among the stars she once ruled, the alien queen watched silently, her voice a whisper carried by the wind of eternity. "Have you forgotten who I am?" No, Daniel thought. Humanity never would, because on that day the universe itself remembered the strength of the human spirit.